Lacy.
You guys want to watch this? That's why we have kids. So we can squirt them. Cece don't like it. Cece loves it when she's not getting hit, but pretends. Totally why we have kids.
The Chris Watts case was a national story. People still talk about this story almost 3 years later. There's a Chris Watts movie, documentary, tons of interviews, and many YouTubers have covered it. Honestly, I've heard bits and pieces of it throughout the years, but I really didn't want to speak on it. I thought that I knew everything about it until I had seen the prison interviews. I actually found the interviewers quite interesting. I will tell you why. I had added him to the Father's Day special because this is where he belongs. You couldn't escape the story. It puts you in the mind of the Scott Peterson story, another husband who had killed his wife, his pregnant wife, to get out of his responsibilities and be free.
I can't answer. I don't know. That's a question you should have an answer to. Definitely, I don't know.
Were you in love with her?
No. I'd have to say that I respect her. And as I imagine everyone does after seeing her come out and do the press conference, an amazing character she has.
Was this the first time? Are there others out there?
No.
There's no one else who can come forward?
No. You know, our romantic relationship, and that is it's inappropriate. It was inappropriate, and I owe a tremendous apology to everyone, obviously including Amber and her family and her friends and our families. This should have been brought forth by me.
Frye.
Okay, first of all, I met Scott Peterson November 20th, 2002. I was introduced to him. I was told he was unmarried. Scott told me he was not married.
I figured the Chris Watts story was similar, but the babies. I was disgusted, and I didn't want to know anything anymore. Looking at the clips of the little baby singing, of how she loved her daddy, it was so upsetting. I just couldn't.
Is a hero. He helps me grow up strong. He helped me snuggle too. He reads me books. He ties my shoes. If you're a hero, blue and blue, my daddy, I love you.
Now, let me just take it back a little bit. Chris had proposed to Shanann at the beach. She obviously said yes. Chris's mother didn't care for Shanann too much. She complained that Shanann didn't need a ring that expensive, even though Chris said that him and Shanann, they didn't need anything from them and never asked for anything. They felt Shanann wasn't good enough for Chris. Chris said his mother felt like Shanann was hiding something. In a nutshell, this was all that was said straight out of Chris's mouth. To me, it started off with bad energy. It seemed like this marriage was just doomed at the start. Chris and Shanann married on November 20th, 2012. Chris's parents and sister did not attend the wedding. Chris says his grandmother attended. He danced with his grandmother at the wedding. Life was pretty good for the Watts, even though Chris's family still felt bitter, feeling that Shanann had taken Chris away from them when Chris moved out of state with his wife. Chris and Shanann had worked together on their future. Chris worked at an oil company and Shanann worked for a company called Thrive that promoted weight loss and weight loss products. They lived in this beyond beautiful home. They had 2 adorable daughters and were both seemingly happy. To promote Shanann's company business, they recorded a lot in their home together. He said Shanann made just as much money as he did. He said that Shanann was such a good salesman that she could take your own clothes off and sell them back to you for more money. They would promote the products religiously. It helped. It also helped Chris lose a few pounds, and he turned into a very attractive man, some would say. Not saying that he wasn't attractive before, but he was, let's say, eye candy? I could see how people would become envious. I mean, it looked beautiful. They were beautiful. The atmosphere was beautiful. The children were beautiful. It looked like a never-ending, beautiful commercial. At least, to me, it did. And I believe someone was watching, too. And in real time. February 18th, 2019, investigators went to the Wisconsin prison to visit Chris Watts, where he sat there for killing his entire family. Now, most people who follow true crime, or at least follow this story, know a lot more about this story, probably far more than me. It has a lot to it. I'm just going to try to stick to the gist of the interview and the story. I won't say everything in case you haven't seen the interviews. Believe me, it's a watch. I just couldn't get into everything. It's just way too much information. But I will say enough and how I felt about the interview. It's 2 parts to the interview, and the link is in the description box. So, the interview started with Chris clearing up lies that people have said about him in the media. He says he gets mail and not so good mail. Some may be positive and supportive, and a lot of people were asking him for advice. The interviewer seemed shocked by that, so did I. He seldom writes back unless he knows them. If they're his parents' friends, he will write back. A lot of people are young, he says, and he believes teenagers or upcoming journalists have tried to written him. He will put those letters aside. It seemed to me like 3 friends at dinner, or at least that's what I imagined in my head. The interviews are on audio, so you have to just sit back and listen. Chris was assured that no charges would be added to his sentence with anything else that he was going to say. The female investigator was actually one of the women who had given Chris the lie detector, and Chris had failed miserably. The other interview was a male interviewer there. They briefly spoke about a gay male that had came forward and said that he had had a 10-month relationship with him and actually was on one of the tabloid magazine shows. Matter of fact, there were 2 men that said that they had had gay relationships with Chris. Trent Balt was the one that they discussed in this interview. He was 29 years old at the time. He said that he had met Chris on a dating app, and Chris said he had never even heard of that dating app and wasn't even on that dating app. Balt said he had even met Chris's children. He said that Chris would always pay for the hotel rooms and had even got him his Botox lip injections. He said Chris had paid for that. He shared texts, quote, "I miss your sweet face," end quote, and other things. Trent also said Chris had gave him the impression that he was separated from his wife. He said that they would watch Netflix together, I believe a show called Orange is the New Black, and they would engage in sex at the motel. Chris said he had no idea who this man was, and that he wasn't gay. Before I continue, I would like to add there is a way where you can tweak text messages. So I don't know if these text messages were put through the authenticity challenge, but you can tweak text messages. I would also like to add that Chris had a lot of his stuff already in the media. For instance, with Chris's female mistress coming forward and saying similar things to Bolt. So I'm not saying that it's false. I'm not saying that it's true neither. However, Chris is in prison now. So even though he said that he wasn't gay then, things could change. Things could definitely change.
Chris Watts' former lover.
Now he's decided to come forward and let his face be seen. Police took Bolte's story seriously and made public this interrogation video.
So we talked about money for sex, how you guys met, the amount of times you guys met. We talked a little bit more about Chris. So I believe you now.
One thing that was written about you is that you're a male escort. Are you a male escort?
No, I am not a male escort.
There's all kind of reasons why people come forward, and we do know that. He said, this is what Chris said, they needed to look inside themselves. We all know again that people do attach themselves to cases that they were never ever involved in. So that'll be up to you to make the decisions if you believed he engaged in behaviors outside of the one with Nicole Kessinger. How I feel? Hey, where things have happened. He would speak about his Colorado prison experience. He said he was treated very badly. He was threatened. They told him to kill himself. He wasn't in any cells with anyone, but people would yell things out. And that there was a hit on him at the Colorado prison. He said that there were gangs there and he was on suicide watch when he had first arrived. He said he would pray that God would move him out of that prison. So now he was transferred to the Wisconsin prison where this interview was taken. He didn't get any kind of threats or any kind of crazy calls at the Wisconsin prison. He didn't get bothered at all. He said not that they didn't care. It's just he didn't get bothered. They would ask him about Nicole, and that's how they started off the jail interview. I think that set his mind a little bit at ease. People was listening to this interview because we wanted to know more about Shanann and the children. So I decided to start my video off with Shanann and the children. Chris is more of a shy guy. He's laid back. He says he's always been that way. He didn't mind letting Shanann take the lead. When he met Shanann, he knew that she had a fiery temper. He laughs. He says that she has a temper like her mom. They're Italian. Chris even said he's more laid back, like Shanann's father, very easygoing. And Shanann said that she wanted to marry a man just like her father, very easygoing. And he spoke about how during their relationship, Shanann didn't want him to conversate with other women. She didn't. I don't see that as a problem. I mean, if you want to be single, just remain single. Don't get involved in a long-term relationship or what's supposed to be a long-term relationship, and bring all your friends and people of the opposite sex and ex-lovers with you. Believe me, there's absolutely no room. So Chris would finally speak about how he met Nicole Kessinger, and it was at his job in June. And it just floors me that a little over 3 weeks later, everybody who was most important to Chris was dead. They would greet each other, flirt with each other. She knew he had a family, but that wouldn't stop her. I'm saying I believe that was her main goal. He had pictures of his kids and wife on his phone. And Shanann would post videos often. And Nicole knew this. Naturally, she would say that she didn't know that Chris was married. Chris said it was, quote, to save face, end quote. I'm adding that she didn't want the media to look at her as a homewrecker. So, numbers were exchanged and they started texting. That's where Chris fucked up as well. You don't give your number to a female coworker unless it's work-related, and you keep it work-related. Maybe this is why Shanann had said no new friends years ago, or old friends. So they would meet each other occasionally, like parks and such, was said in the interview. Another major screw-up. Chris said he never thought about straying from Shanann. So why did he even entertain this idea? I mean, what was so special about Nicole? Besides, she was a new body, somebody different, because that's really the only reason why men would stray in the first place. It's something new. That's it. That's all. And just a little side note, in this one particular picture right here, Nicole kind of reminds me of Squeaky Fromm. That was one of the Manson family killers out of the Charles Manson story. I just had to throw that up there. I mean, absolutely no shade. It just came into my mind. He said that he told Nicole that he slept in a separate bedroom. So he was lying to Nicole. Even though she knew that he was married, I mean, she believed that he was getting a divorce. He made it look like they were really separating. Nicole didn't want him living with her. I'm not sure if he asked or it was discussed. I'm not sure. But Chris said that Nicole said her house was like a sanctuary or something like that. And she didn't even have many people over there. But surprisingly, another coworker would come on occasion. It was a male coworker, I believe, and Chris. But it was a sanctuary to her. However, she did help Chris, or she would help Chris look for an apartment. In other conversations, she also told Chris that she was dating other guys. Was it true? It was a possibility. Chris thought that it may have been true. The investigator thought that maybe this was Nicole's way of trying to push him to hurry up and divorce Shanann. Nicole was very different than Shanann. That's what some media outlets would say. It said that Nicole was a younger version of Shanann. I mean, I believe at this time, Nicole was 29 and Shanann was like, 32? So what? 2-3 years apart? That's not a big deal. But, they made it a big deal. I mean, big whoop. 2-3 years apart. They look like they're the same age. Not a big deal. They also say that Nicole wanted sex all the time. Chris actually says that. I mean, well, of course she did. I mean, of course they did. Again, it's something new. New couples always want to have sex all the time. They can't keep their hands off each other. If you just got with a new man or a new woman in your life and you guys aren't tearing your clothes apart and just being anywhere and trying to get it snuck in anywhere, then I don't know. I don't know how your relationship is, but normally that's how it happens, especially when you're young people. That's how it happens. You can't stop looking and touching and talking to each other. That's the honeymoon stage. That's what makes things so good in the beginning. And, after several weeks, sometimes several months, that's when the real you guys kick in. But enough about that. Shanann was a pregnant woman with 2 small children that was probably very hyper and active. They were small. Plus, Shanann was working, taking care of her husband and a big house. Surprise that Shanann didn't want sex all through the day and didn't want him to put it wherever he wanted to put it. Perhaps Shanann didn't want it there. However, it was said that Nicole would just do just about anything. I'm going to keep the interview very light and PG. He made the media, or they made the media, seem like Nicole was just wild and stayed ready. But remember, she had no responsibilities except getting in this man's head and following Shanann on social media. Chris describes Nicole as bipolar. Nicole would even go on websites to see how to deal with becoming a mistress. She was preparing herself. So basically, Nicole was knowing her place and knowing she would always be, quote, second fiddle, end quote, to him. That's what she said. She would also go on websites and figure out to have a certain kind of, let's say, intimacy with Chris. She wanted to prepare for that. She was even looking into wedding dresses. So what was going on here? Are you going to be a mistress? Or are you going to be Mrs. Watt?
We did it again. I like that shirt. Really?
Really?
That's awesome. So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome.
Chris would say in the beginning of their relationship, and mind you, they were only together a little over 3 weeks. She said she was undecided on children. But now she said she wanted to give Chris a baby boy, his first son. The investigators had to tell him that, of course, Nicole was watching. Of course, she knew that Shanann was expecting. Shanann was having a boy, and that she named the boy Nico, which is an Italian name. It had nothing to do with Chris trying to name the baby after Nicole. Shanann had named all 3 of her children, Bella and Celeste and the unborn child, Nico. The investigators did ask Chris, did he have any say in any of those names? Chris said no. Shanann had named all 3 children, but he was happy with those names. He liked those names. The investigators slightly, and a lot of the media, had tried to make Shanann look like she was overbearing again, bullying almost, and that Chris Watts was so docile and innocent. I must say one thing. Shanann was definitely an alpha woman, and Chris Watts was certainly more laid back and, letting her handle it, and he was okay with it. A lot of men do that. It doesn't make them less masculine. It doesn't at all. Some men are just laid back, and when it's time for them to step forward and become a little bit more stronger in certain points, they'll stand up. But a lot of men are less masculine when it comes to certain things like naming a baby or picking out patterns for the house. They leave that to the woman, and I don't think it's anything wrong with that at all. So, the marriage became strained. Nicole was trying to do everything she could to keep them together. She would text her friends and talk about this with her friends. Her marriage was falling apart. She was open. She was honest. She was candid. She would tell her friends that Chris had become very distant. She'd given Chris self-help books to try to help fix their marriage. And we know it takes 2 people to fix a marriage, and it seems that Shanann was the only one trying to fix this marriage. They would speak about selling their house and downsizing and moving. She would give Chris a little space, and she would go and visit her parents in North Carolina. Now Chris was able to spend a significant amount of time with Nicole while Shanann was gone. He said he would always have sex with Nicole at her place. Whenever Shanann did call, Nicole would get mad, especially when he would go outside and use his phone to speak with his wife. When he finally did return home, when Shanann was on her way, he would see the pictures of his family, his children's things, his children's toys. It felt strange to him. He hadn't been there the entire time. This affair was 3 weeks long. These 3 weeks had changed his life, and definitely not for the better. These 3 weeks ended 4 lives. In part 2 of the interview, it would start off where Chris would say he had came back from lunch. I believe he had like macaroni and bread, and I believe he had like some milk. The interviewers had asked, was it chocolate milk? He said no. Chocolate milk was a treat, and he had got some chocolate milk on Christmas. The interviewers had given him some Powerade, and he said thank you. He was very glad to receive that. They spoke a little bit with him about things aside from Shanann and Nicole to get him back into his interview mind. He said he missed eating at Bojangles and that Shanann's family would make a fried pizza, and they discussed how the fried pizza was made and how it tasted. They told him now that the questions were going to get a little bit harder. They needed to know a little bit more about the murder. The interviewers asked, how did he kill his family on August 13th, 2018? Shanann had came home from her trip. She had to notice Chris hadn't been sleeping at the house. Now, in the Chris Watt movie, and yeah, I actually watched that too, Chris said he had slept in the girl's bed, but Shanann didn't really believe that, though she didn't press it. Now, in the interview, Chris said that Shanann had came home, she was tired, and she got into bed with him. During the night, he felt Shanann touching his thigh. The interviewer, along with Chris, laughed. That meant it was time for action. Shanann and Chris had sex. The interviewers asked, did it feel like he was cheating on Nicole? He said it did. He also said he felt like he was cheating on Shanann the first time that he had sex with Nicole. Maybe that's because he was. Shanann knew that something wasn't right. Trust me, women can tell. It's our intuition. He said he felt like they weren't compatible. That's what he told Shanann. He didn't feel like they were compatible anymore. They both knew that the marriage was rocky. Shanann had even booked a trip for just the two of them. Bella and Celeste would be with the babysitter. She was trying to do anything she could to save the marriage and keep them together. Chris told her to cancel the trip. Why would a single mother of 3? And this is the first time that Chris had infidelity in their marriage. She loved him. She was willing to forgive him. She loved the family that they created in a short amount of time, and she didn't want to lose it. Chris said they spoke about everything, from staying together to not staying together, from moving to staying. They both cried. He describes a memory of the mascara running down her face. She hadn't had a chance to wash her makeup off when she came home. The mascara ran down her face as they cried together. He says he didn't feel like it was going to work. Then he said, maybe we'll go somewhere together. So at this point, Chris didn't even know where his head was. but unfortunately, we knew where it was. Why would he leave his wife? Why would he leave his wife and the responsibilities that he had for the past 7+ years for a 3-week fling? He would even tell the investigators that he had love for Nicole. He wasn't in love with Nicole, but he felt he had love for Nicole at the time. He told the interviewers that he wished he could have taken the whole, quote, Nikki thing back, unquote. The whole Nikki thing back. He wished he could have taken it all back. Maybe his children would be here. Maybe his wife would be here. The man who was never violent towards his wife would get on top of her and straddle her. He said they were just talking. The interviewer said, "Did you always do that?" He said no, and he doesn't know why he even did that then. But he got on top of her and they continued talking. She told him to get off her, that he was hurting the baby. She asked, was there someone else? He said she knew that there was someone else. He told Shanann that he didn't love her anymore. He says within that argument, Shanann told him he would never see the kids again. He said he wrapped his hands around her neck and he strangled her. He said that she wasn't fighting. The interviewer asked, what was she doing? Chris said, I don't know. Praying, and he quoted a Psalms. He choked her until she stopped breathing. He said he couldn't let go, like something was controlling him. The interviewer asked again, was Shanann doing any movements? They told him that part of above her lip had been ripped. He admitted that he choked and smothered Shanann with the pillow. He said he did hear her grunting a little and moving a little bit. He said Celeste had came into the bedroom because she must have heard noises. He believes that he told her to go back to bed. He wrapped Shanann's body in a blanket and backed his truck up to the door. And you could actually see it in this footage. He backs the truck up. He had to actually go to the street to pull his truck in because his truck would drip oil on the driveway. So Shanann had him park on the street. Investigators asked, where were the children? Were they alive? He says yes. He starts to sniffle. His voice cracks. He breaks down. He appears to be crying. He said something again was controlling him. He doesn't understand why this happened. The children asked, was Mommy okay, seeing their mother on the floor of their father's truck. He had a gas can with him as well. He didn't know what he was going to do with the gas can. He didn't know what he was going to do anyway. He thought about killing himself. He says he doesn't own any guns, any weapons, so he was confused with all his decisions. Nothing was making sense to him. It was a 45-minute drive to where he would dump his family's bodies. The babies were still alive in the back of his truck. He watched them through his rearview mirror. They were laying close to each other. Celeste had brought her blue blanket with her. He could smell the scent of skunk in the air. Another memory he remembers. He arrives to the job site. She was the first. He took the blue blanket and he put it over Celeste. He strangles her with his bare hands as Bella watches. He says Bella didn't say anything. The interviewer asks, did she know what was going on? he didn't know if she knew or not. Bella would then ask him, was he going to do to her what he had just did to Cece? He says he hopes he didn't say yes. That would have been awful had he said yes. He would now start on Bella. Bella said, quote, "Daddy, no," end quote. He did the same thing to her as he did to her big sister. The interviewers asked, did you not want Bella and Celeste to have a hard life with no parents or parents of a divorce? Chris responds, no. He should have not done that. He was just angry at this point with everyone. All he hears is Bella saying, "Daddy, no." Chris always had stuck to his gun within this interview. They tried to suggest things and sway him with different words, but Chris sticks to what he knows. The interviewers asked, why was he so angry? He said it was the fact that Shanann had taken him away from his family. The day of his wedding, that he had cursed out his mother. The family issues. He was estranged from his family. He had become a very upset person. He was harboring this for 7 years. At least, that's what it appears to look like. He says now he's supposed to have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old son. He cries. The interviewer said watching the video, he didn't seem happy when Shanann had announced that she was pregnant and it was recorded. He said he was more shocked. They had just talked about trying for a third baby, and Shanann was pregnant within days. It came quickly. It had taken weeks, if not months, for Bella and Celeste to be born. Some people looked at the video and they said it looked like he wasn't happy. They even had tried to dissect the video and say this is when he became evil or whatever. I believe him. He was shocked. And it was a boy, and he wanted a boy. So now, Shanann and her 2 children were all shoved down the oil shaft. He would get on international TV and say that Shanann hadn't arrived home. This was the first time that many got to see him. He says he didn't even know that the case had even went nationwide. His affair was now bigger than him.
Chris Watts, WATTS.
Wow. What's going on right now around your house?
Right now it's got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's they're doing their best right now to figure out if they can get a scent, see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now it's just they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
What happened? Your wife came home. Tell me what's.
She came home from the airport 2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here, and about 12:10 in that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say, but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people, is she's not getting back to her. If she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. She gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. And then walked in the house, and nothing has vanished. Nothing was here.
Nicole had interviews too. I honestly didn't even want to look at them. It was clear to me that she knew something was going on. Some say she was there and helped with the murders and she was hiding in the basement. I personally don't believe that. But I believe she was miserable. And miserable people want everyone else to be miserable right along with them. Shanann appeared too happy. She looked like she was having a good life. She did, until Chris met her. I also read that on Nicole's computer that was seized by the police, she looked up Amber Frye's book deal. Remember? Scott Peterson's mistress? She was wanting to know how much. Hey, maybe she could benefit off the horrible crimes of 2 young children and a mother being murdered. I don't know. He first said he saw Shanann killing his children and then he killed her. The saddest part was his family still has dislike for Shanann, and they believed in 2019 that she had done this and that Chris went to jail to save Shanann's memory. I believe that Chris killed his children. I don't think Shanann killed her children. My opinions don't matter. I have no stake in none of this, but I do talk about a lot of women that kill their kids, and I don't think in this case Shanann did this. It's a lot more, again, to this interview. It's a lot more to this story. Chris is charismatic. He's charming. He's humorous. He's attractive. You can be drawn in easily until you remember what he's done. The media and Chris had a point of painting Shanann as overbearing. She was an alpha female. She had goals in her life. Chris was kind of a young man who needed a little push, a little guidance, a little encouragement. That's how I felt. 7 years later, when the cat's away, the mice will play. 3 weeks Shanann is gone, and he jumps on the first female close by that he felt that he can get, and quickly. And he did just that. He even said that he wasn't again in love. He felt that he had love. No, Chris, it's called infatuation. He said if he hadn't met Nikki, his whole family would still be alive. Do you agree with that? As much as I don't care for Nicole, and karma will come for her if it hasn't, I believe that he would have found other reasons to kill them. Nikki, as he calls her, was just the push that he needed. He's pathological.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I am having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.